Hello, and welcome to the Action Pack Podcast, the podcast where we unpack the action pack movies from the past. Today, I am your host, Bobby Seaboat. I have with me Dread. I don't even know you guys are above me, so I have Dread over here. Let me activate these, and then Speedman over there in his Rambo hat. Today's our inaugural episode of the Action Pack Podcast. We're gonna start with the Terminator, the best Arnold Schwarzenegger movie in my opinion, but we can get there as you talk a bit through this. So, Dredd, how about you go ahead and give us a little bit of an intro to this movie, an overview of the Terminator.
Terminator is one of the best science fiction movies of all time, in my opinion. I think we're setting the bar extremely high coming out with our debut podcast with the Terminator. Like, this is James Cameron at his peak, but an amazing movie. I'm really excited to dive into this one. If you don't know what the Terminator is, I don't know how you've made it through life this far, honestly.
Yes, correct. All right, so let me go ahead and get myself set up here. So how you guys been doing?
Pretty good, man. It's really hot here.
Yeah, got a sunburn today. First time probably in 5 years I had a sunburn. Not enjoying it too much.
Friggin' SBF'd up, dude.
I was, but not on my shoulders. Because I did it myself, and I wasn't thorough, baby.
Can't get the shoulders by yourself.
And before I forget to mention, our two friends here are from the Great White North, Canadian brothers. So happy to have you.
Also very far apart.
A fourth, Uncle Pumpkin, but he can't be here today.
Right, he can't make it today. Where is my document?
The man behind the camera is no one, because they're three separate cameras very far apart. But there will be someone behind the editing process, and that man is.
And
Uncle
it will
Pumpkin.
be Unky Punky.
Unky Punky. Yep, exactly.
Sucker. Have fun.
Okay, so I know, Dredd, that you have lots of little tidbits and stuff to tell us, but do you want to start us off with just one fun fact that we can start us off that could maybe start some conversation?
I think one of my favorite fun facts that I learned about Terminator was actually how James Cameron got the idea for Terminator. And that was actually, he was super sick when he was filming, I think Piranha 2 was the movie. And he had a crazy fever dream where he saw a fucking metal endoskeleton dragging itself out of flames with kitchen knives. So he wakes up, immediately draws it, and writes it down. And the reason why the movie's set in the present is because he was fucking broke. He didn't have enough money, and really, they didn't have the technology to make a movie set in the future. So that's where the whole time travel came in, was making a movie that they could afford to make in the present time.
Awesome.
With future elements. That's pretty cool.
Totally.
And it's even cooler that it came from a fever dream. My fever dreams are like puzzles where I have to make a box with marshmallows and toothpicks, and then you have to pull it apart. And if it doesn't match, like if one of the toothpicks doesn't reach another marshmallow, then I die, and it just repeats over and over. I feel like that would be a worse movie than the Terminator.
I don't know, man. That sounds kind of like a Saw movie or something.
Yeah.
They've probably done that. They have a puzzle in one of the Saw movies where you have to set up a fucking toothpick marshmallow figure, and if it falls, you lose your fucking arm or something. Start bleeding everywhere all over marshmallows.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, that's funny.
I like the idea to in order to get it in budget, do it present day, and then just have your couple scenes. I wonder how many scenes, like how much runtime total is future stuff. There's very few scenes of like actual future fighting. It's probably only like 10 minutes.
I think there's only like 3 scenes. The longest being when Kyle Reese is talking to Sarah about when he really fell in love with her, and that's
his
like the longest one.
PTSD flashback.
Yeah, the rest of them, like the intro is very brief, but it does a really good job of just setting the tone. Like,
yeah,
skull crushing tanks.
Did you notice the skulls? Like last night when I was watching it, they all look like infant skulls.
Oh,
at least in the beginning scene. No.
because they're actually the size of marbles.
Oh, really?
All of those
Oh, I
skulls
guess
are
so.
miniatures.
Miniatures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, that was
before
what I
green
had in my
screen and
notes.
CG,
Yeah,
everything
man.
was miniatures.
They didn't really, everything's practical, done in camera. Like digital manipulation wasn't really a thing in 1984. So I
Were they
fucking
doing
love
the
that. Sorry, go ahead, Bobby.
were the lasers
I think
somehow
that was,
CGI'd in there?
I think that might have been one of the few things that was digitally added, but I'm actually not entirely sure of the lasers.
It was probably just matte stuff, because like the lasers in Star Wars, that would have been way pre CG, and they looked
Oh, yeah.
similar, just like the light halo on the color bolt. So who knows?
Yeah, and like camera manipulation, they can do crazy stuff with lighting effects, increasing your shutter or decreasing your shutter speed and having the lens open for longer will create these big light trails, at least with still photography. So I'm sure with videography, they can do so many things to actually emulate a laser just by using camera tricks.
Oh, that just sparked my mind in a million different ways. Like some guy like throwing a spear made of light, and they just like trailed the thing. Maybe that's how they did it. I don't know.
Could be, yeah, man. It could have had a flashlight stuck to it and he just fucking threw it, just yeeted it.
Or just
There's
be reflective, highly reflective, and then shine a colored light at it.
totally.
We're figuring out how to make special effects in 1984.
Yeah. Now we're gonna
We're
go do
breaking
this.
ground.
We're gonna do this now and see if we can recreate the effects. They're actually so
was-
smart.
Yeah, and like that was one of the first things I noticed was just how like I felt like the movie as a whole was pretty dated. Like it was hard for me to look past just the age of it in certain parts.
Right.
But like right from the beginning, the font, the Terminator font, as it was slowly scrolling past the screen,
Yeah.
looked so
iconic.
cool. Yeah, and like you could tell that it was all hand drawn, hand painted, like the bevels in the font, so cool.
Man, and so many movies actually still utilize that very simplistic intro. Like if you look at Stranger Things, that's probably where they took that inspiration from, is these old movies, these old action movies, science fiction movies from the 80s. Alien is another one that has the text reveal that's very simplistic but impactful. It just you feel it when it comes on the screen. Same with the Terminator. Like it's just moving around the screen so well, and I feel like that is so indicative of the time.
Muted my
Well,
mic as I was coughing. Do you think that that's still a thing though? Because when I was watching Terminator last night, that kind of stuck out to me as being unusual. Just like the long 2 minute credit scene with the slow, just like names, and that's it. Really, like not a lot going on.
Yeah.
I feel like I mean, good example with Stranger Things, but that might have been more of a stylistic choice to match the era.
absolutely. I feel like it was a really good stylistic choice though, because if you look at like TV shows that are coming out now, oftentimes their intros are way fucking longer. And like Game of Thrones, for an example, an amazing intro, one that I'll never skip, but it had a super long drawn out intro. And
Yeah, it was a long time.
TV shows just release these long intros that I always just press this fucking skip intro button if it's on Netflix, because
Yep.
come on, I don't have time to sit here and watch 5 minute intro, but I would watch it if it looked like Terminator because it actually wasn't super long.
Or
Do you
had
guys?
that awesome sound to it.
Yeah.
Like that melody. I can't even. Just that melody is awesome.
Dude, the music is some of my favorite. Brad Fidel did such a good job in the production, and that dun 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 dun, and then you hear that ting. Really cool thing about that ting is he's actually hitting his microphone with a cast iron skillet. That
That's
sound is so iconic, man. So many synth producers like do covers of that, and I'm sure don't even know that that is literally made from fucking hitting his microphone with a cast iron skillet.
that's awesome.
That is awesome.
And you'll hear it now. Next time you listen to it, just you'll know. You'll be like, "Holy shit, that actually sounds like that."
Nice.
Completely shattered and ruined his mic for the one sound effect. Iconic
Likely.
and worth it.
Totally worth it. Ting.
Do you
So, go ahead.
do any other VFX stuff jump out at you guys from the movie? There's one scene in particular that was just like glaringly obvious and hilarious to me, and I wonder if you guys also noticed it.
I'm sure I could guess what
Uh,
it is,
Do it.
but
the
Guess.
the one
the
the,
Arnold.
the
Oh, go ahead, Bobby. You go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say because I like so I have in my notes down here, like they're all the prosthetics they use are pretty good. Like his arm when he like has the when he rips his arm open, I'm like that doesn't
Yeah,
look
that was
that
pretty
bad.
good.
But then when it shows him like doing his eyeball thing, I'm like that looks like Mike Myers, dude. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
god, that looks so bad. Anyway, what was your guess, Dredd?
Oh, I was gonna guess the Arnold puppet.
Oh, in the
It's
truck.
all
No,
of
no,
that
the
stuff.
scene you're talking about when he's cutting his
Oh,
eye
okay,
out.
okay.
That's like
Yeah.
the big Arnold prosthetic.
The Arnold puppet and the prosthetic is a result of the scene, but it's when it's the first car chase where Terminator's chasing them, and I can't remember what happens. He's on foot and a car blows up and he dives through the explosion. And the
Oh,
next
yeah.
scene, his hair is different and it's the same wig that they use for the
Yeah.
puppet. And his eyebrows are gone. His eyebrows are
Oh
burnt
yeah,
off.
yeah,
And I thought that was so hilarious that his eyebrows were gone for like 2/3 of the whole movie. And I
yeah.
think they did it so that the prosthetics would be easier. So they wouldn't have to have realistic eyebrows on the prosthetic. And just like for simplicity's sake. Because I
That's
can't
a
see why they would do that otherwise.
So here's my thing. This is I actually have this written down, and I this was a big thing in my bad guys in the design of the Terminator was um, that happens immediately after the scene at Tech Noir. So if you think about the in the whole movie, it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't tell you who the Terminator is. It doesn't tell you who Kyle is. All you know is that both of them seem to be stalking these Sarah Connors. And you don't know who's doing what until Terminator kills the one. But then it's immediately after it's revealed that the Terminator is a Terminator. That's when he jumps through the fire and his eyebrows are gone. So to me, that says we want you to see this as a foreign entity, an alien object to make it look freaky and scary and add that horror element because we don't need to have the mystery of like what is this thing and who is he and what is he doing. That's how I took it
Yeah,
anyway.
that's a good angle. Because then they can show him as almost being superhuman as well. He got so
Yeah.
burnt that his eyebrows are gone and he's still just going forward. I guess he did get shot 45 times at Tech Noir before
Yeah.
that. But the
I think
eyebrows
that's
is more visceral.
yeah. I think that's where I'd call it, man. If my eyebrows got burnt off, that's when I'd be like, you know what?
Yeah.
Just-
Shutting her down.
No, I agree with Bobby. I thought that was also like how they showed his gradual degradation into the endoskeleton was
Yeah.
yeah.
just progressively showing his body getting worse and worse. And I thought the first thing was the eyebrows, and that was like made it look really weird. That's very strange. He has no eyebrows. What's going on with him? And I feel like that was just a very visual degradation and like a good way of them showing that he is the T800 T101 101 model.
And like you said, he was
101.
broke. It was a cheap way to do it rather than having metal
Yeah.
prosthetics right away. Just shave off his eyebrows.
Bobby, you actually touched on something that when you were talking about oh fuck, I totally forgot what I was going to say now. When you were talking
But
about the eyebrows, shit, you said something in there that
it's
totally sparked me and
foreign
made
and
me wanna.
alien and
Oh, my bad.
that's all right. So we can that's fine. We can move into just kind of the next where we just kind of I want to just kind of get everyone's general ideas. We kind of already given it, but really what I've taken mostly from this movie was just my general thoughts. I really love this movie. Every time I watch it, I find myself enjoying it more. The thing I like the most is because of the low budget, James Cameron had a task in front of him to where he uses the dichotomy of the two of them really well. So like one of my favorite parts about it that I didn't realize so this last viewing was their different reactions to the time travel. When Terminator lands, he just stands up and is totally fine and just walks over and just like, oh, it's LA. But then Kyle's like in crippling pain and can barely walk and then it like the movie progressively goes back and forth to show like Kyle's way of gearing up versus Terminator's way of gearing up. And it does a really good job of showing how outmatched Kyle is this entire time and how the ending makes that much better because he spent the whole movie showing you how up against the wall Kyle was from the very beginning. Just very interesting. Dredd, what do
Yeah,
you
it's,
think? What's your overall thoughts of the
I just
movie?
I just want to touch on what you said there first, but I really like how you framed that, in that you see both of their preparations, and sandwiched in the middle is Sarah Connor just trying to live her fucking life, dude. And on either side, you see this, well, you don't know at the time, but this methodical, machine-like, scary individual taking no shit from anyone, punching holes in punks and fucking
Yeah.
guts and viscera dripping off his arm. And then this dude who just steals a hobo's pants and is
Yeah,
sprinting down the alleyway, screaming at cops about what year it is. And I mean, that alone was such a cool scene, because it just, right then, okay, this is time travel. He's screaming at a cop,
Yeah.
what day is it? And he tells me, he's like, what year? He's just
The cop's like,
losing it. Cop's just like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? But it just,
Yep.
like you said, it really, the contrast between the two characters is apparent from the start in the way they landed, like you said, into their whole preparation. I really loved the way you put that.
Thank
But
you.
overall, this is one of my favorite science fiction action movies, and it is my favorite kind of action movie because it has all of this beautiful science fiction packaged with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he still gets to say some cheesy fucking lines as a Terminator. So, I mean, what more can I ask for as a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan and a science fiction fan? Such a cool original story that I feel like movies are still pining after today, to make something as original as Terminator was. Like, if you think about it, so many movies have done time travel since then. So many movies have taken the actual core of what Terminator is, a defense network system that deemed humans as a threat and thought the only way to fix it was fucking extermination. How many movies have come out now that are about robots not essentially doing that and then subsequently doing that? So many movies.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I feel like it just inspired so much, and with good reason, man. It is a great movie, and like I said to start, top shelf for me.
Nice. Speedman, what about you? What are your general thoughts?
I also want to touch on what you talked about with Reese being on the back foot. I didn't really think about this until now, you mentioning that, but he came second. So because they were similar, that was a stylistic choice as well. There's a couple shots where you're not even sure who you're seeing. Is it Arnold or is it Michael Biehn? Because like similar haircut, similar shape. I mean, Arnold's obviously a monster, but so Arnold
shadows
comes
are good.
first. Yeah, it's usually silhouettes or low light, and you're like, oh, who is this?
Really
But
well
Arnold
blocked
comes
and
in
blocked.
first. And so as soon as Reese comes in, sorry, I keep using their different names as say Michael Biehn and
Anybody
Reese.
watching this already? It's fine.
Yeah. But as soon as Reese comes in, Arnold's already been there and he's already caused shit. So the cops are looking for a basically naked man acting crazy. So they're already after Reese as soon as he lands. So that's even more on the back foot right away. That was just something
True.
that came to me right now that I didn't even consider.
That's true.
I-
Yeah, I didn't even.
I think that Beans probably got the upper hand though, because Arnold's wearing like big leather motorcycle boots, and Beans got fucking Nikes with a Velcro strap
Yep.
that he was
The-
sure to do up the strap.
You don't see obvious product placement in older movies quite like you do today, but that was very obvious. It was the
Oh, yeah.
profile, the swish, the nice like tight
Yeah.
wrap on the ankle. Yeah, that
Like,
was
there
pretty
was
good.
no other purpose of that scene other than to show that. Like, and
I-
as a police officer, would you not have checked the little fucking photo booth thing? Like I don't know what those are called, but in malls, those little photo booth things with
Yeah.
the curtain. I don't know if that's what he was in or if he was just in a changing room. For some reason, I pictured him in a photo booth.
It does look like the changing room normally isn't like a drape, like it's a door. So.
Yeah.
I have
usually.
seen some that are drapes, and I mean, this was 1984. They might have been like drapes for the fucking new door.
Cameron didn't have
Well-
budget for doors in his movie.
Yeah.
Only
That could've-
drapes.
Well, that was the thing about you mentioning the Nikes there. It's like I was not curious if he had his shoes on tight. I was like, I'm not worried if his shoes are on tight. I'm watching him run around like I'm not exactly. So it's like, oh.
But how
Nikes, yeah.
crispy is his drip?
Oh, Dude,
Mm.
I'm not sure what that means 100%, but
I don't think it means anything.
I think it's crispy. I think it's
I
super
think
crispy.
That's
think
also something that I didn't realize. I'm kind of the outlier here in that I've only seen the first Terminator once or twice, and that's like decades ago. So a lot of the
Fair.
stuff that I remembered from Terminator is actually from Terminator 2, and I didn't realize
Right.
that it started in Terminator 1. So when I saw Arnold come down first, I assumed he was going to be wearing leather because that's what he was wearing in T2, but he was wearing the like canvas punk jacket with studs and like a chain,
Yeah.
and the back patch had leather, and then the motorcycle boots. And I just
your
completely forgot
clothes
about
in
that.
the movie.
Yeah,
I love
that's what
that.
I go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go. You go.
I was just gonna say that that's what I remembered is the motorcycle scene where he's at the biker bar. Your clothes, your
Yeah.
boots, your motorcycle. Give them to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I forgot Bill Paxton was in it. Oh, and another thing, the "fuck you asshole" that Bill Paxton says, that's the first line, or one of the first lines, that the Terminator hears. And then when the landlord later on, that's my favorite line in the entire movie, is when Arnold says it. I had no idea. I didn't remember that it was a callback to Bill Paxton saying it to him. And just like the
Yeah,
little
dude.
things like that, I was appreciating a lot. Because I hadn't seen it in so long. And it was almost like rediscovering little bits from a different movie, like the Easter eggs, the callbacks from T2, seeing where they originated from, and not even realizing that they were callbacks. So that was
Totally.
probably like the biggest part for me why I liked it so much this watch.
That's why I think that it's interesting seeing that Cameron was shoved into this position of not having any money, but this awesome idea, and he had to make it work. And so he uses a lot of those like cool dialogue choices, or the whole back and forth between them, or the rules that he has to come up with. Like nothing organic can come through, so he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have a space. He doesn't have spacesuit. Like he doesn't, or not a spacesuit. Future weapons or whatever, which is a makes sense, and they even call that out in the movie where like, oh, it's easy because he sounds insane because it doesn't have to have any proof. It's just very well written and done in that way to where you're like you get so sucked in, but it's like he did it because he just didn't have the money to put a laser gun in the movie. If
That
he
I
would,
think
he would have.
I
Go
think
ahead.
also what is like definitely clear that he didn't have a lot of money, but also a stylistic choice that I loved that they chose was how they tell the backstory, and the way they build the world is all through dialogue. Like you see a conversation between Reese and Sarah, and that's when you discover what a Terminator is. You didn't know what it was up until him in the car with her explaining what a Terminator was. And then when they're apprehended by the cops, he talks about the future and explains like what time travel is and why they had to come back, giving the explanation. Even like you said, no, only organic matter. That's why they do it naked. So they even explain those little choices that he makes just through dialogue. And I really like that world building through natural, organic conversation. Just
Mhm.
it's a great way of telling a story.
I
I
had
really
that
like that.
in one of my notes, just highlighted in bold, the Terminator definition when Reese is explaining it
Mm.
to Sarah. That was a really cool part in the movie.
That's one of my favorite descriptions of him. Uh, Infiltration unit, part man, part machine. Underneath it's a hyper alloy combat chassis, microprocessor controlled, fully armored, very tough. But outside it's living human tissue, flesh, skin, hair, blood, grown for the cyborgs. His
The
description
best
is
part,
just so good.
Yeah, it's
and the
pretty
best
good.
part about that, it doesn't feel like a forced bit of exposition because he's
No,
saying it while they're running away in a car, and he's like, "I
Totally.
have to tell you this. You need to know this because if I die right now, you need to be able to, prepare your son or whatever." Like he's
yeah.
so involved in the mission. He's like, "I got to
Yeah.
tell you. We don't have time to stop and for me to explain it. Like you got to know now." So,
And
and it
that
keeps you
that
engaged.
line he gives in that moment, dude, it gives me chills every time when he just explains how fucking scary a Terminator actually is. It can't be
Relentless.
bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead. Like,
I
holy
have that.
fuck,
I have
dude.
the exact. I already have. I have that in my notes too. Because I
That
was like, "What a
fucking
good line!" Oh,
oh Dude, like that is literally one of the first things he ever says to Sarah Connor. Talk about a heavy conversation. Holy fuck, man.
That's
And she's just like,
creating
"What?"
like the ultimate movie monster too. Like there's you just have to beat it. There's no way to avoid it. It will come until
And-
it's dead or you're dead.
And that was like that conversation was following like I don't fucking know. I didn't count, but like probably 12 shotgun rounds straight into the Terminator.
Yeah,
And he just unfazed. He like fell over and that was it.
gets up
And
and
then
So-
yeah,
continues.
and the cops are like, "Well, he was probably wearing body armor. You know, it could stop a bullet." And in her head, she's probably like, "But 12 shotgun rounds? I'm not
Yeah.
sure about that."
I mean, it's remarkable that Reese didn't hit an innocent bystander in a busy bar like that. It's one of the things I thought of. He's like pushing people out of the way and then fucking starts unloading a shotgun, which I'm not sure. Maybe I guess we'll just say for the movie they were slugs. They weren't. It wasn't like buckshot. They were slugs.
They were saying 12 gauge rounds, so you
It
would
could be a-
assume it's a slug.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you
Oh,
still
I
call
guess-
12 gauge buckshot.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the caliber of the shotgun. So
Yeah.
like
Well, plus,
it could still be, but we'll say it's a slug.
probably
We'll say it's
extrapolate,
slugs.
right? Because the hole in his arm, right? He had like a hole that was like that big.
Mm.
So it's like that was probably hit from a slug because that's when he was firing at him. So his hand was probably hit. So
And
there you go.
buckshot would have probably like rapidly
Hell yeah.
deteriorated the human tissue. Like
Yeah,
probably, yeah, obviously, yeah.
big chonks.
only went for center mass though. I mean, Reese was trained well. Center mass. Shoot for center mass.
Yep.
I don't know where the
Gotta hit
CPU is
shots.
in the Terminator, but
Probably in the head
science-
just for
yeah,
thematic purposes. It's way
exactly.
more impactful if you decapitate something to kill it.
Plus
Yeah.
the eyes, you know, the
Yeah,
eyes turning
The
off
glowing
is always
eyes.
it's always a very big visual.
Yeah.
Yep. And it didn't stop until its head was crushed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That
But
is a good point.
the rest
But
of
its
them was
full body
also
was-
crushed at the same
Yeah.
time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So
And
for the
she just
purpose
ran
of this
away and left that
podcast,
arm
he
there.
was shot with slugs and his CPU's in his head.
Yeah.
Okay. We're building our
Perfect.
own action-packed podcast. Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's
Retconning
canon.
the official lore.
It fits in. Can I touch on one more thing about Bill
Go ahead.
Paxton?
Yep.
I loved seeing him because he is fucking young in that.
So young.
And later he comes in for another James Cameron film, which is Aliens. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. Also Michael Biehn, but
Also,
also
Henriksen.
yeah, Lance Henriksen. Paxton is known for the shit he says in movies. That's why fucking people casted him, was the ridiculous shit he says. And I guarantee the like line he says to the Terminator, people started saying afterwards. He said that he was a couple cans short of a six-pack. And I'm like, that's just a great way of saying that someone lost their marbles, you know? I thought it was a very Bill Paxton thing to say. He always has these little lines that are very quotable, and I guarantee people started saying that after. Like, if someone was crazy, oh, he's a couple cans short of a six-pack.
Bill
great.
Paxton also seemed a couple of cans short of a six-pack because one of the funny things in that scene is they're looking through the telescope at whatever. I'm assuming they're in New York or some shit. And someone else is looking through it. And he smashes a beer bottle on the front, on the lens of the telescope, and then says, "My turn." Like, you just ruined the telescope. What are you doing, you big dumb dummy?
Not only, maybe it was like some really hard-tempered glass, but there'd probably be a lot of fucking beer on it and be very
Yeah.
difficult to
It would
see
be so hard
through.
to see.
Get in
I
your
would
face.
have
How are you going to see your
personally-
dang twisters now?
I personally would have smashed the beer after my turn.
Yeah.
Like,
that was
you
just
wanna
one of those
maximize
like
your viewing.
silly moments from old movies. There's a bunch of them, but that was my favorite one.
That's a funny thing to pick up on. It's interesting how, as we all watch these movies, we're all looking and paying attention to different things in particular.
There's one thing that I wanted to ask you guys because I'm not sure if the psychologist or the psychiatrist who is talking to Reese and Sarah Connor, is he in T2? I'm pretty sure he
And-
is.
And T3.
Did you notice that when he's leaving the cop shop, he bends down to do something or light a cigarette as Arnie's passing behind him, so he never sees the Terminator. So that's why he still is doubting Sarah Connor in the second movie. I thought that was a really cool touch.
Awesome, man. I love that.
He didn't see, yeah, him
His
coming.
pager goes off.
Oh yeah, that's it.
And they
Looks
actually
down.
showed him looking at his pager in a different scene, so it seemed believable. They
Yeah,
showed
it
that
wasn't
he was
just
distracted with his pager.
yeah.
Because when he was interviewing Sarah, he also had to turn off his pager. So I think they set that up really well.
Yeah, they
Just
did.
those little details. Like you said, the fact that he doesn't know who Arnold is or
Yeah.
who the T800 Model 101. I don't know what we want to call it. You can call it a T101, whatever the fuck. It's a T800 series Model 101 if you want to know the exact what
Is that what he
Terminator
said?
is.
I thought he said Cyberdyne Systems Model 101. I thought that's what he said.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it,
that's what he
no.
does say in the movie, but
It
I had
is.
only ever heard of him referred to as the T800.
the
Maybe that's
T800
what
is
he
the
said?
series. So
Oh, okay.
if you remember when he's describing the Terminator, he actually says that the T600 had rubber skin. So he's
Right, yeah.
talking about the series number. So
Gotcha.
they do say T800, but what Arnold is the model 101 of the T800 series.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just from
Okay.
pop culture is what I heard T800 from.
Yeah, I think that's where I got it too, but he does mention the T600s in his
Yeah.
conversation with Sarah, and he says they have rubber skin, and then he starts talking about why the T800 is so much harder to spot and why he has to be there and why he couldn't make a move until he saw the Terminator.
Mm-hmm. Until the
Mm.
Terminator made a move.
This is why he was fucking lurking so long.
It's also kind of funny that, I mean, obviously Arnold is Arnold, but if the newest Terminator movie, I can't remember what it's called, Genesis maybe?
Dark Fate?
Dark
Fate, that's it. I really like that model of Terminator because he was way more ordinary looking and it was more like believable. If you're going to send an assassin back, you want someone who's going to be a little more nondescript than a hulking beast of a man in Arnold. Like,
Yeah, no
who's the assassin? Probably that guy over there.
That's like the
That's
T1000 too.
Yeah, Robert Patrick.
Yeah,
Very
he was
nondescript.
very nondescript, looked like a regular dude, and would stab you through the mouth when you're drinking milk if you fucked around.
Yep.
Like that kind of Terminator is the scary one because, like you said, they're nondescript. You wouldn't pay them any notice. But like you said, a hulking man, you see fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger anywhere, and you're like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah. Oh,
how,
wow.
How big are your biceps, bro?
What kind of numbers you putting up, bro?
22 inches. How much you bench? Oh, shit, that's it. With the arms that big, bro.
So, also something when it came up and it said what the future was, it was 8 years from our current year,
Yeah,
2029.
2029.
I saw that and I was just like, oh man, that makes me feel real bad.
Isn't that amazing? And even earlier, he says too that she's like, I'm not stupid. Sarah Connor says to Reese when he's explaining, she's like, I know we don't have that. And he's like, no, they invent them in about 40 years. And I'm like, 40 years? That's now.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yep.
that's hilarious. And then later they say, yeah, 2029 when he's talking to the cops. So
Yeah.
good.
You mean that's 2029?
I mean, I really hope that a defense network system doesn't deem us all as threats and completely obliterate the human race. But at the way we're going, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
2029, you know, all right. 2020 was pretty rough. 2029.
Let's let the
Cyberdyne
robots take it from here.
Yeah, maybe they'll do a better job. Maybe we shouldn't be in control. No, I mean, we'd all be dead.
Not all of
So,
us. They need people to work. Why?
Which is
They're
a cool
robots.
fucking fact, dude. Yeah, that is also a very good
They're
point.
tireless.
Yeah, they don't need breaks or to eat. Like, how are you gonna feed them?
I guess they
These
just work
robots-
people to death.
That's a good point.
Hey,
They
maybe
probably
the
did do that. Yeah.
maybe they run on people. Maybe they
Oh, dude,
use
they-
Soylent
the
Green.
dead people, they just make into food to feed the people so they can continue to work. Oh, that's actually fucked up, man. I think we just hit the nail on the head with that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Unless there's like peaceful farming T800s. Like, oh, we gotta make some food for the slaves. Nah, just feed them themselves.
I gotta go tend to my turnip crops.
I need your overalls, your hoe, and your garden rake.
They were trained using Stardew Valley. That was their simulation. All right, you're gonna run Stardew Valley for 3 years straight. You'll be the best turnip farmer and sunflower farmer ever,
Just to keep the humans alive,
just to
so
keep
they
the
can
slaves
work for
alive.
them. There was another thing that Reese said that they kept the humans for. It was to work, and there was something else. Do you guys remember what that was?
No,
Oh, no.
Yeah, he said he was talking to Sarah
I thought he
about
just
like,
said for orderly disposal. They were kept for
oh
orderly
yeah, that's
disposal.
right. They were orderly disposed of, and they kept some of them for work. That's what it was. So they didn't keep them for anything else. It was so they could round them up into a camp so they could kill them and then put them in a mass grave because for some reason the machines cared about that. I mean, maybe that was the part man that we always hear about. Part man, part
maybe
machine. They had a little bit of feelings left.
Had to have been
only
programmed
for
then.
after they're dead.
Yeah. Yeah. The human tissue, there's a little bit of remaining feeling in there
Yeah,
for
maybe they
the
had to.
recently deceased.
Maybe they had
Wow.
to take their tissue and like break it down into stem cells to create their own skin coverings so they could go back in time.
I mean, they do say it's man, like living flesh. So how did
It's
they do that? They
clones for the
probably were
robots,
doing
yeah.
some fucking crazy experiments or grown. They did say that the flesh and all that was grown from cyborgs. So, very interesting. I'd be curious to hear the lore of like, did they have farms similar to you'd see in, I think it's Alien Resurrection. You see all the face huggers in big tubes because Wayland Yutani. That's another movie, but do they have something like that? They have fucking humans in tanks? Luke
Like the
Skywalker's
Sixth
in
Day,
back to tanks?
They
another
just
Arnold
skin them
movie.
and they just skin them and throw it on there.
They just get the skin from Predator. We're just mixing all the movies
Yeah,
now. The
They're all
Predator skins them and hangs their muscle and gives them to the Terminators. What? There's actually something pretty funny about the human tissue was James Cameron initially wanted the Terminator to eat a candy bar, like a chocolate bar, but eat the wrapper and everything because in his mind, he felt that it needed to be able to keep the human tissue alive, so it had to do that somehow. But they apparently like widespread reaction from the public when they heard that the Terminator ate a chocolate bar was like just so negative that they cut it. They were like, no, we're not putting that in, which I agree with. Like, where are these digestive organs coming from to process it? Or would they just have like a small robotic stomach that has a brine solution in it that is directly like, I don't know, it would have to have a network of veins to go through all of the skin. Like, that is just getting way too much.
yeah.
Let's just not explain the human tissue and move on.
One of the design choices for the Terminator that I thought was like, it's super iconic, but I didn't notice it until after all of Arnold's skin got burnt off, was teeth. They're human
Yeah.
teeth.
Yeah.
And I'd never really noticed that before. It's so obvious when you see it, like in any picture, but I was like, oh wow, that's the one human element they kept is just the teeth. And like it looks like a skull. It's just a metal skull, and it's so sinister, and I fucking loved it.
It's
Yeah,
actually was so smart to have the
Yeah.
teeth because that is literally the one exposed part of bone we have on our entire body. So
Mhm.
it makes sense that something that has a metal endoskeleton would have fake prosthetic or porcelain teeth to
Yeah.
make it more believable. If it
Yeah,
had
that was
metallic
so
teeth,
cool.
I mean, all they'd have to do is tell people to smile, and then you'd know that it was either Nelly rapping about grills or a Terminator.
that was one thing I thought was pretty cool that they introduced the idea of dogs being able to detect them pretty early. Like not even
Yeah.
saying anything, just a small little Pomeranian or whatever it was barking at him in the yard at the first Sarah Connor's house. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, the dog's barking at him. Like, because at that point you didn't know it was a Terminator. He hadn't even done anything other than kill. Well, I guess he killed the shopkeep, the gun shopkeep or whatever. But
And Bill Paxton and his 3 buddies.
I like that you
yeah,
guys,
yeah.
I think, are more easily able to view the movie from like a outside approach. I have so much bias attached to these movies that it's so hard for me to not just have all of this like knowledge that I've gained through research and reading about it attached to the movie and just trying to view it as a first time viewer. Like what does the movie show you? I really love that you guys have that information because I really try to watch it like that, but I'm like I'm so biased. I'm so biased. I
A
just
lot
fucking
of
love the movie.
a lot of these movies, like I was born in '83, so I watched them when I was really young, and that's the only time I've watched a lot of them. So it's going to be really fun to continue doing the pod and just watching the movies again, basically for the first time. I remember some stuff, but it'll, like you said, it's kind of with a fresh set of eyes looking at stuff and just
Totally.
seeing what the movie shows.
And that's valuable because I have so much bias attached to the movies. I know all of these movies so well because I watch most of them yearly. I love all of these terrible action movies that are not terrible. How dare you?
How dare you?
But I watch them so frequently that it can be hard to kind of separate myself from that and try and view it from that angle. So I really
It's
loved it.
awesome though because it's a whole like separate set of information that you have that I definitely don't have. I don't know if Bobby does, but it's
Not
like
as
all
much
the
as
trivia, all the deep lore. You had two of the best quotes already memorized. Like it's cool to have the differing perspectives and the differing sets of knowledge.
It's a good dynamic.
It is.
So speaking of the trivia stuff, there was one that I remembered from when we did our movie night, Dread. And I don't know if you brought this up or if it was the Amazon Prime trivia stuff, but the first few rounds out of his shotgun at the
Oh
police station
yeah,
had
that
the
was
extra sound effect.
that
Did
was
you notice
Amazon.
that, Steven?
What was that? I didn't hear that.
So, in the police station, when he comes in, he has a shotgun, and the first like 3 or 4 times he shoots the shotgun, it makes the sound of a rifle, like a sound instead of a boom sound.
Like an automatic rifle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
future
and I
guns.
guess it was just a mix-up that they didn't realize and didn't have time to fix it in post, I guess, or something. I don't know. I
That
just,
seems like it would
we
be
just thought of it.
so easy to fix in post too. It must have just not picked it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely just missed it.
It's very obvious though, because he like points the shotgun, and then it's like, and then he's just
Yeah.
like, one boom, and you're like, yeah,
It's like
pretty.
I'm gonna go back and
Bob,
watch that later.
Bobby, I'm pretty sure you brought it up before we even noticed it on the
Maybe.
the Prime Video little trivia on the side. If you guys don't know, not you guys personally, I'm talking to viewers right now. Prime Video has so many trivia facts on the side panel if you bring
Prime
it
is the
up. Like
shit.
so much stuff that you can read about the films. It's
Some
actually
of them you
really
didn't even
cool.
know, Dread.
Oh, a lot of them I didn't know, and that's actually where I learned some of my information was just from reading all that trivia. They take facts from all over. Like I've read articles in different places. I've read the Schwarzenegger his biography Total Recall where he has a whole bunch of information. Prime has all of that. Almost everything that I learned externally, they have. So it's actually just a great source if you want to know extra facts about movie production or special effects or the music, like anything you want to know about your favorite movies. Open up that little trivia tab on Prime. It's fucking
That's awesome.
awesome.
I've never done that. I've
Yeah, dude.
only used X-Ray, which I also love. X-Ray is the shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'm gonna look at some of the trivia for Predator.
Oh, dude, there's so much. Predator's another one that's filled like Terminator. It took me probably 4 hours to watch it going through all the
Oh
trivia.
wow.
Yeah, dude.
Is there
It's like
any like
every scene.
prompt that comes up, or do you just check every scene?
when you
I just
pause,
moved.
it's like an overlay on top of the screen on the pause menu, basically.
It'd be cool if there was something that like overlaid while you're watching, kind of like pop-up
Mm.
video.
To
What
alert
I
you
did,
when there was a new piece of trivia. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
cool.
that'd be cool.
that would be cool. What I did was I had two tabs going and I played the movie and I had in the other tab, there's timestamps for all of the trivia. So you can open a
Oh,
menu that
cool.
has just all of the trivia and then you can click it and jump to scene. So I was watching particular scenes with the trivia. So they set it up like really, really well for you to be able to just watch certain scenes or go to a certain scene through that trivia and see what they're talking about. It's actually really it's really cool.
So since we're on trivia, I know, Dred, that you've read the autobiography by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you've mentioned there was some information about this movie in there. What was one? There was one I thought was really interesting that was it his military experience, or he just had got used to firing a gun without closing his eyes, and he was doing
Well,
that in the movie, or what? There was something there. I don't. What was it?
yeah, so first of all, Arnold was very hesitant to play the Terminator because this was early on in his career as an action star, and he didn't want to get boxed into being a villain. And
Hmm.
so he wasn't initially he was set to be Kyle Reese, and OJ Simpson was supposed to be the
No
Terminator.
way.
But
The juice.
uh Cameron was just like, okay, I'll meet with Arnold, and he was actually planning on being rude to Arnold so he could just make that as an excuse, saying that Arnold is impossible to work with. But he actually got along with him really well. And he was like, fuck, I see Reese as being a pretty slight guy, not imposing. Arnold's not going to work. But Arnold was showing so much interest in the Terminator and how the Terminator would move and be machine-like and very methodical. And one thing he talked about was what you just mentioned, Bobby. Because of Arnold's experience in the Austrian army, he was a tank driver. He used to have to assemble and disassemble weapons as part of his like general infantry. And so he said to Cameron that the Terminator should move very machine-like, very methodically, shoot weapons, be able to reload them without looking, not blink when he's firing. And when he was saying all of that, Cameron's like, "You need to play the Terminator." And it wasn't until James Cameron said to Arnold, "This movie isn't about the hero, it's about the Terminator." And that's when Arnold actually went against his agent's wishes and said, "No, I'm doing it. I'm gonna be the Terminator." And fuck, man, obviously it was one of the best career choices he
Yeah.
made.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
one of his most iconic roles, and then he becomes the hero in T2 as a Terminator.
It's
So
cool that he was really particular about the way he wanted to move, because that's my second note I have for the whole movie is the way he scans the first time. It shows him
Mm.
just looking side to side, scanning like flawlessly, not like herky jerky like a person would look around. That was
yeah,
super cool.
and you don't see the perspective from the Terminator, so you don't know that he's got this crazy red vision
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So just the way that he moved like that really showed that machine-like movement.
That red vision was also hot dog shit. Whenever it showed that overlay, how does he see
Yeah, it
anything?
was. There
That
were a
red
couple times where we paused it and tried to read it, and I was like, "This is nonsense. This
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything."
Like trying
that
to
red
see any
vision,
shapes or anything in the red vision, it's almost impossible.
it's impossible. That red vision and the code that you see is actually ROM assembler code for the Apple II. And if you
Oh
type in a
wow.
certain code on the Apple II, you can pull up that same code that they used on that screen. Because I thought that was a pretty cool thing. Because I was wondering how they like decided what to use and what the code meant. Because yeah, it's just
Rather than
imagine
just random nonsense.
just random shit on the screen and choosing your dialogue like an RPG. Fuck you, asshole.
So, okay, well, that might be a good segue to get into some quotes. I want to talk about the quotable lines. Very quotable movie.
Cool.
But before we get into really quotable lines, I wanted to bring up one that I put in my notes that I was like not sure if I was reaching or if this was an intentional line to like add more depth to the Sarah Connor character. When she's in the diner, she first shows up and she walks up to the table, and the kid puts the scoop of ice cream in her apron. And then she looks down and she's like, "So, like, what is even happening in my life?" And the girl reaches, like, leans around her shoulder and says, "Look at it this way. In 100 years, who's going to care?" And I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, in 100 years, a lot of people might care if Sarah was, like, because of the whole, I don't know. I was like, maybe I'm stretching it, but like this all is about the future. And so like if Connor wasn't there, I was like, is that line, like, why would she say that line? Because I feel like
I
this movie doesn't really do a lot of wasting time or lines. There's not a lot of wasted space in the movie. So I was like, does that mean something?
I actually wrote that quote down as well, and because I thought it meant that just nothing is going to be here in 100 years. This
Oh, okay. Okay.
We know from the first scene that the future is desolate, war-torn and destroyed. And none of that shit matters in 100 years. So that's when I heard her say that, in 100 years, who's going to care? I was like, I thought that was just like a little, hey, the
A little
future is fucked up.
foreshadowing.
Yeah.
A little bit of ice cream in your pocket doesn't fucking matter, you
Yeah.
know?
Right, yeah, exactly. That's why I was like, there's no wasted space in this movie. That line had to have meant something.
Totally. And I
Um,
feel like every line, like you said, there's no wasted space. Anytime someone says anything, it always is conveying something. There's so much intent behind every line.
Well, maybe not, because the second one that I wanted to bring up is when Lieutenant Traxler, right, tries to he goes in and he goes to take some pills, and the other guy's like, "That coffee's
Oh,
2 hours cold," and I put a
Yeah,
cigarette out
mama.
in it, and then he just takes it and does it anyway. Oh my gosh, that was funny. That
I
just
loved that
whenever-
character, the lieutenant. He was so
Traxler?
funny.
that was one of my
Yeah.
favorite guys in the movie.
Just like the trope of the painkillers, it's always stressed out, either antacids or painkillers, smoking cigarettes. And when
He
I
has
can't
that moment
remember,
where he's like, "Give me a cigarette," and he gives him a cigarette, and he goes to light it, and he's like, "Oh, I have a cigarette already."
yeah,
Traxler always, or not Traxler, Ed Traxler is the commissioner. Paul Winfield is who plays him. He's portrayed as like a chief commissioner and stuff like that in multiple movies. I just watched Cliffhanger, and he was the police chief or commissioner. I'm not too sure which he was. And then in Mars Attacks, he reprises the role, and he's like this stupid lieutenant in Mars Attacks. I don't know if you guys remember that. He's like introducing himself.
no, I should watch that movie again.
But I really liked. I know we're talking about quotes right now, but you brought up Traxler, and I just loved his character progression and how he starts as not believing, but you can see during the interviews where he's watching Sarah Connor and watching Kyle Reese and them talk, you can see he's starting to believe, because Lance Henriksen, Detective Hal or whatever, Hal Vukovich, is like joking, ray guns, that's fucking rich, you get a low, and he's like, shut up, because he's actually
Wants to hear it.
interested and he wants
Yeah.
to hear what they're saying. He's like, you know what? They
Maybe he's
they
not
might have
crazy.
something here.
Well, especially
Um,
because you see, he just starts getting so, and that's almost at the point when Kyle starts being like, "I've had enough. I need to talk to her right now. Because if
Yeah.
you don't let me see her, he's gonna find her and he's gonna rip her heart out of her chest." And
Dude.
like, and he starts losing his mind over it. Like, wow.
Michael Biehn fucking nailed that scene.
Yeah,
He did it
yeah.
so good, where he's like trying to patronize a doctor and talk to him about shit, and then he just gets fed up and he starts screaming. Scene was
Because
so
he knows.
good.
So good.
It's because he's like, "There's no other way. We have to stop it. I'm the only one that knows how to stop it, or at least could try, I guess."
It's
Knows
shitty
how
because
dangerous it actually is.
they actually omitted a lot of that character progression that you don't get to see of Ed Traxler, where the gun, the revolver that you see Kyle Reese give Sarah Connor in the motel, in the Tiki Motel, is actually Ed Traxler's revolver. So in a scene when they're trying to escape the police station, they come across a wounded Ed Traxler who now believes them because he's seen the Terminator. And
Oh,
he
is this a
gives them
deleted scene?
yeah, and he gives them
Oh.
his revolver, and he tells Reese, protect her, protect Sarah Connor. And they omitted that. They deleted the scene, but later you still see them using Traxler's revolver.
That would have
Interesting.
been such good I would have loved that if Traxler was still there, because you just the last time you see him was he gets shot, and then the other
Then
guy
falls
was like,
down.
"Ah, Traxler," and he comes out, and that guy gets shot, and you're like, "Oh, well,
You're
damn."
like, oh, you guys were trained very poorly. You just jump into a hallway and shoot and then just stand there. You don't seek cover after.
Classic 80s hip fire.
Yeah. Yeah, with the fucking assault rifle, hip fire, probably one-handed.
Yeah.
So yeah,
One
so the
more-
last quote. Oh, go ahead.
There's one more thing I have to say about Paul Winfield. He's got fucking tiny ears.
Dude, they're
You
distracting.
mentioned that.
They're the smallest ears I've ever seen. And when I first noticed it, I was just I couldn't believe it. I was wondering how big my own ears were compared to my own head. I'm like, do
Are
I
mine
have
big?
like,
Is that
or do
normal?
I have huge ears? They're so small. His head goes in
The
to
shape
his
of
ear.
exactly the shape of his head. It's like an hourglass, and with the ears at the midpoint.
It's like
It
you
was
take
so
him for
every
a
time I
walk.
was watching, I was just like staring at this middle of his head.
Like he took a balloon and squeezed it, started twisting it, and that's where his ears are.
He
Oh
looks like a
man.
balloon animal caricature of himself.
Yeah, I just had to say that.
It was worth bringing it.
I need you all, if you're listening or watching this, to look up Paul Winfield and just look at his fucking ears. Look up a headshot. Look at his ears. He's a great actor, but we have to recognize his great ears as well.
Okay.
The only quote that I have written down is one of his quotes, and I can't remember what's a retort to, but he just says, "Yo, mama," and I thought it was hilarious coming from the police chief.
What? Oh,
I don't
remember
even.
that part.
That one,
It was
I
like
missed
a
that.
throwaway thing too, and it didn't even make sense. Like it wasn't your mom joke, like "Oh, your ears are tiny, your mama's ears are tiny." It was like Kyle Reese is crazy, yo mama, something ridiculous like that, and I
Him
absolutely loved it.
him just trying to ad lib and throw it
Yeah.
in there. They're like, nah, just
It's written
keep
into
it.
his contract. I get one yo mama per movie.
Oh man, we gotta watch the other Ed Traxler. Fucking, I keep calling him Traxler. Paul Winfield movies and see if he says Yo Mama. He actually voiced in Gargoyles, so maybe he throws out a Yo Mama
Oh,
in
nice.
the 1990s animated series Gargoyles.
Okay,
Let's do
so
it.
I got it pulled up here.
Yo Mama.
Yo mama.
Okay, right here. Hold on.
Oh, it's so hot in here. I
Ah,
had to take off my
Ed
headband.
decided to give a statement to the interviewers who were still outside his office to get Sarah to call them and get a hold of her. He asked Hal if he looked appropriate for the camera. Hal said he looked like shit. Ed said, "Your mama."
Nice.
That
Thank
was
you
his
for looking
response.
that
He
up.
felt- Yep.
That's perfect. You look like shit, Yo Mama.
I guess that makes sense. Your mama looks like
Kinda.
shit.
Kind of.
It's very rude.
Oh my God. All right.
I-
But yeah, so the last quote that I have was one that I thought was really interesting that Sarah said when they were under the bridge, and he said, she was like, "You're talking about things I haven't even done in the past tense. It's driving me crazy." And I was like, that would be it. That line helps you kind of get into her perspective a little bit more. Because the whole time you're like, this is so cool. Like Kyle Reese is from the future. There's a Terminator. He can't be stopped. But you never really get to stop and think about like, what is she going through? And like, that's a really good way to portray her being like, this is weird. You keep saying I'm going to do these things, and I don't feel like I have an iguana and I work at a restaurant. Like I don't. What are you talking about? Like that. So I just thought it was a good line.
Totally, man. And I really love those little things that they do to just show actually how fucking badass Sarah Connor is. She is taking all of this in stride, and she actually saves Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor when he's hanging out the fucking window shooting at the Terminator and they're about to drive into a wall. She slams the car into park, completely destroys the transmission, and the car stops and the Terminator fucking smashes the wall. They get arrested, but it just shows that even under extreme pressure, Sarah Connor thought on her feet and was smart enough to throw the car into park when she wasn't able to reach the brake pedal because she wasn't driving. And to me, that was just like this small detail that I probably missed the first time, but I really like Sarah Connor as a character and this origin story and seeing how she becomes this crazy badass that you see in subsequent films. It shows early on that she is a very strong person. And I love that in a strong female lead, especially in the 80s. I feel like Linda Hamilton is one of the best female action stars to date. She did such a good job and she held her own next to fucking Michael Biehn and Arnold Schwarzenegger. She still took some of that thunder and was impressive in the role. I thought she was great.
They
Just
did
touching on it.
do a really good job of like growing her up into the badass and not just being one. But they also balanced that really well with a couple scenes of her just like losing her shit like any normal person would in a situation like that. So they had
Totally.
like the good balance of being a badass and like the little moments, like you're saying, throwing the car in park, not like these huge heroic things. And then like a couple scenes later, just like basically melting down.
Yeah. And being vulnerable. And I think
Yeah.
Cameron didn't actually want there to be a big love interest between Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor, which if we start talking about that, we're gonna go down the whole fucking time mind fuck that I'm prepared to go down. But
Yeah, I've
not
got
yet.
notes about that.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there, but he didn't actually want there to be a big love interest, and that was actually one of the head like funders of the film. One of his only requests was Michael Biehn or Kyle Reese to have a cybernetic dog that he walked around with, which Cameron was like, "Fuck no." Or to have more of a love interest between Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. And he was like, yes. But why I liked it so much was it really just shows that realistic what a young girl would probably be feeling, or not even just girl, a young anyone would be feeling super vulnerable and probably like that whole Stockholm syndrome. I mean, not quite. It's a little different, and especially when the guy professes his love for you. But it just shows that balance you're talking about between being a complete badass, but also a very vulnerable young woman who just left a waitress job and all of her friends were murdered.
Yeah.
Like, she has gone through some shit. That's often lost in films. So I feel like they did a really good job of keeping that at the forefront.
Agreed.
I do have more quotes too.
Okay.
Do you have,
Okay.
do you have another one?
That was my last one. The talking about things in past tense is the last one that I had. So, Speedman, why don't you hit us with some of your quotes? Do you have any quotes written down?
Just
You
your
liked?
mama.
I
That's it.
have a couple.
Go ahead.
I've got one of my favorites, which actually started as Kyle Reese, which I didn't know, but Arnold later says it, and I think Terminator 2, he shows up and he says, "Come with me if you want to live." Those are actually the first words that Kyle Reese says to Sarah Connor. He sees her and he says, "Come with me if you want to live." And just the way he says it is just like, he's not fucking around. And you know she has to listen to him, especially
Yeah.
with what's going on. But those lines,
He's not trying to exaggerate. He's being
No.
like, no, if you don't want to die, you have to come with me now.
totally. And those lines are fucking Kyle Reese's, man. Those are Michael Bihn's lines, not Arnold's. And as huge of an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan as I am, I've seen shirts that say, "Come with me if you want to live." That's fucking Michael Bihn's line, man. That's Kyle Reese's character line. And I want to see a shirt of Kyle Reese that says, "Come with me." I'm gonna make it. I'm making
That's
it.
that's one of the things that I alluded to earlier that I thought was from T2, but was actually from T1. And
Yeah.
in my notes, I have Michael Biehn got ripped off because there's a couple moments that Arnold just, it's a callback to what Michael Biehn says in the first movie, but Arnold gets all the credit for it, and he is the one immortalized for saying it.
Yeah. Michael Biehn is such an underrated action movie star, man. He is so good.
Yeah.
So fucking good. And then I do have a couple more quotes. I've got one from Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, just like when he first starts describing her, she doesn't believe him. She looks at him and she says, "He's a machine, like a robot." And that's when we start to get more of a definition of what a Terminator is, because he says, "No, he's not a robot. He's a cyborg, a cybernetic organism." And then he goes into his description of what a Terminator is. And I thought that quote was just very realistic. Like, that's what probably most people would say is when he's describing, like, he's a machine, like a robot. Like, you would have no fucking clue. And that's just a very real thing, a very real reaction.
In 84.
Yeah, which I thought was a really great line. And then the last one I'll say, super iconic. Everyone knows Arnold Schwarzenegger for this line. "I'll be back." That's like, you can't omit that one.
Yeah.
That is one of the most iconic Arnold lines.
That's
Everyone
the
says
most
it.
iconic line from Terminator and Arnold.
Yeah. And what's
Or
so
get to
funny
the
is that
chopper.
immediately after that, when he comes, get to the chopper. Then when the car drives back, the guy looks up and you see the flash of light in the guy's glasses, the cop's glasses, and then when it turns around, when it cuts back, the car's lights are off. And you're just like, did he just instantly turn them off before he hit the building, or continuity error? Is all it is.
Continuity.
Click. He's like, "I don't need lights. I can see red. I see Apple II ROM. I don't need lights."
I've got
Stupid.
a note here that relates to continuity. It's not quotes, but it's just about Ginger. Sarah Connor's roommate,
Mm.
and how like they set her up from the very beginning as being obsessed with music so that she'll be oblivious to crazy shit
Yeah.
happening. And
I
I
did
thought that was
actually
cool.
know that.
Like the
Yeah.
first scene, she's in the bathroom listening to music, and then in the kitchen listening to music, getting plowed listening to music,
That's how I get
I
plowed.
just with your headphones on.
Yeah, with my headphones on, just getting plowed.
jamming.
Also, her boyfriend was a
Singing.
badass. He
Dude, he
fought the
put up such a
Terminator
good
hand to
fight.
hand. Yeah.
Man, I
Don't
thought
make
of
me
that
mess you
too.
up.
He like really probably put up the best fight against the Terminator that anyone did. The
I mean,
Terminator threw him like 5 times as opposed to just punching through his heart like
Yeah.
he did to other people.
Do you
he did
know
the right
who?
thing too. If anybody burst into your house, if you hit him with a lamp, that guy was probably going to go down. But
Yeah, and he was a
Terminator.
beefy dude too. Like,
Yeah.
does anyone know who that actor was? I guess I could look it up right now, but he must have been a bodybuilder or something because he was a giant guy as well. He was
I don't
almost the
remember
same
him being
size.
like overly muscular, but he was just
He
a
wasn't, but he was a
framed
big man.
guy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
a funny thing
Speaking of
about
go ahead.
go ahead, Bobby. No, you go ahead. No, you.
I just speaking of, I feel like there was a good job taken with this continuity stuff. I've been trying to think of some examples, but that was a thought I had, which was along with her always wanting to listen to music so that something that happened later on made sense. I feel like I can't think of any specific examples, but I get the vibe that that did happen a bunch of times throughout the movie, where they
Oh,
were
there's
very consistent in making sure that it makes sense as to why something happened.
Kind of the
there's there,
similarities between Reese and the Terminator, just so that they could have shots all throughout the movie where you're not quite sure who's who. I feel like that's
Yeah.
one of those continuity things, but it's different than what you meant.
What were you gonna say, Dred?
Oh, I don't remember. We can. I
Okay.
can't remember what we were gonna. I was gonna touch on something that Speedman said, but I actually don't recall.
Who cares?
All right.
Let's move on.
Let's see. What else do we want to talk about here? So we talked about the quotable lines. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but what do we I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on I guess we kind of did talk about it, but the visual effects. Mostly I want to talk about these prosthetic effects because it seemed like there were several different versions of these prosthetics they used. Like the hand one I was pretty impressed with.
Yeah, that was cool.
But like the one in the mirror, that one probably was the worst for me. Well, no. The one where it was him in the truck was probably the worst. Where it was like his glasses were gone, and so they had to have the eye there, and he was like
Yeah,
The
jerking around or
marionette
whatever. And I
Thunderbirds.
was like, what the hell? Like it just pulls you out of the movie so bad. Um, I don't know, but other than that, I thought it did pretty good. Because most of it was practical, I would say. What are you guys' thoughts, Speedman? What are your thoughts on the visual effects? You said you had quite a bit of notes on that.
Yeah, more just observations, like the
Mhm.
way that stuff was and how janky it was because it was 84. Um, but yeah, the prosthetics were super silly and awesome, campy, but they were probably pretty groundbreaking for the time. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah, being able to capture a likeness that well of Arnold. I mean, they kind of did it in Total Recall, but that was later, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that was a couple of years after.
It was 1990, 6 years later.
Yeah. And
And I'm sure that in 84 everything's in like 480p and it's dark in the theater, so you're kind of just
yeah,
like, "Oh, he's got red eyes. That's so cool looking," and it's yeah.
definitely.
How did they do
The
that?
one thing that I really liked was the stop motion for
Oh yeah,
the endoskeleton. Like anytime it was just the endoskeletons, the stop
yeah,
motion was pretty cool. And the like giant machines in the background in the future, like
yeah.
the tank tready guys, and then having
Yeah.
Michael Bean and the other soldier, I can't remember if she even had a name,
She
but
died.
running in the foreground. Just the way that they layered those shots was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just old
I
school Matt.
The stop motion was really awesome, but it's something really cool that if you noticed when you were watching the scenes of the endoskeleton in particular towards the end, you saw 2 different versions. When it would show chest up, it looked very realistic, and the movement was very realistic compared to the movement of the other characters. Whereas the full body shots was all stop motion. So how they did that was they actually had a 3/4 bust Terminator that was on someone's shoulders.
Oh, cool.
So anytime they were just showing the top half of the Terminator or the head, and why it looked so much more real than that full body was because it was a completely different model. So the stop motion was the full body. They had a puppet, and then the 3/4 like head, chest up was all on some dude's shoulders. So the whole time he's like following Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, you can see like kind of behind his shoulder view. That's actually on someone's shoulders.
That's
Really
cool.
awesome way they did it. Stan Winston Studio did all of it. Legendary special effects artists. They've done pretty much every fucking movie you can think of from the 80s and 90s. They
Their
did the
Instagram
Predator
is super
2.
cool.
Yeah, I post it all the time.
Yeah.
They did all of the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. Like Stan Winston is a legend. People who worked with him have come out and made successful careers with their own studios from what they learned with him. Stan Winston is amazing.
Oh, Stan Winston. All right, I had to type that in my browser over here so I can look into that because
Yeah,
that's the
highly
kind of
recommend it.
this movie magic stuff is always so fascinating to me because once you learn how they did it, you're like, oh, that I thought like you think it's magic. Like you're like, I couldn't even comprehend how that would happen. But like a thing on somebody's shoulders when they're like lumbering around, you're like, oh, I guess I could see how that would work. And like the technical ability for them to build that and make it look like it did in the movie without having to, they can't go and like remove the strings digitally afterwards or any of that stuff like
Really.
they can now. So
It's
interesting.
really like they used a lot of different practical effects too. Something they did in post was the car chase scenes. They actually sped them up in post to give
Mm.
them more of a sense of speed. And they had cars driving out of frame that had revolving lights on them. So it would look like they were passing alternate light sources faster.
Cool.
So it
Oh,
just gave
wow.
this bigger sense
Little
of speed
tricks.
to the picture. Yeah, just like these little tricks that they used back then. Almost everything was filmed at night to reduce the cost of expensive lighting. It was all just naturally filmed. And some of it
Wow.
was filmed illegally.
Right. What's the story behind that?
There's a scene when Arnold steals a station wagon. It was actually the last scene that they filmed, and they didn't have permits. So Arnold Schwarzenegger actually had to change of clothes in the station wagon so they could quickly get the take of him getting in it and driving away, and then get changed after so it didn't look like they were filming. So they did it illegally. They didn't have permits. It's pretty funny
Nice.
where they're just trying to cut a little bit
Low
of money.
budget. Yeah.
See, this
But
is why I called you the resident expert around here because you're adding a lot of extra information here. It's very, very nice.
just all the useful shit that I just love to learn. They
I
use a
wouldn't
lot of
call it.
miniatures too. That's another thing. Like we touched on the miniatures being used at the intro, is those skulls being crushed by the tanks was all miniatures. But also the scene of the tanker truck exploding in the end of the film was a model that was about 8 feet long and a foot tall. And that's what they blew up because funny story, actually the buildings closest to where they wanted to explode the tanker truck were storing ammunition. So they couldn't do a
Oh,
full-size tanker truck because of the collateral damage.
and we noticed this when we were watching it before for our movie night. The truck that gets blown up that he was driving was the same truck that when he pulls up to the first Sarah Connor's house, that toy truck gets crushed by his
Yeah.
wheel. It was the
Oh,
same truck,
really?
it's the same model.
Cool.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
same
More
model. Yeah,
foreshadowing.
yeah. There's a
Nice.
lot of that. It's so cool. Yeah, just cool, fun stuff. Um, okay. Well, I don't really have much else on visual effects. Just because we touched on everything I had. Anyone else have any visual effects, visual aesthetic stuff they want to talk about?
I don't think so, no.
No,
Okay.
just the miniature
Um,
stuff. Like it's pretty cool, but it's also once you know what to look for with miniatures, it's very
Yeah.
obvious to see them. Like the flame when the truck blew up, just the flame size is so huge compared to the truck. It'd
Right.
be a lot
you're like, no, fire
more
doesn't work that
small
way.
flames, but it's just like a giant one lick of flame going up.
To be fair, I mean, they still used an 8 foot long
Yeah, that's a pretty
like
big
model.
miniature.
It's pretty big, but obviously
Yeah.
it's not the size of a tanker.
Yep. Okay. Well, we can move on to talking about some soundtrack and the score and stuff. I don't have a ton written down here, except for I did write down. We did talk a little bit the shotgun noise making the rifle noise. That was weird. Um, But the one thing that I did, it made me write it down, was when as soon as Kyle finds Sarah underneath the desk in the office at the police station, and then they get up and they start running out, that music ramps up and it's just got that like dum 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 dum, and I was just like, oh man, it made me stop and write that down because I was like, I got to mention that. So
Yeah, dude,
pretty good.
that police station escape chase
Yeah,
sound, that theme is one of my favorites of the entire movie.
yeah,
It
that was
just
very.
is so pulse pounding. It just the sense of urgency is so there. You just feel like you need to escape. That theme was so well done.
Actually, now thinking about it, you saying this, like they met Traxler in a deleted scene. I felt like as soon as that scene felt like it ended really abruptly.
Yeah,
As
it
soon
did.
as you see Kyle knock that guy out and grab the keys,
Just
then he
out.
just is in the room, and then they leave that room, and then that's it. And then it just shows the Terminator like walking towards the door, being like, "Oh, they're gone," and I was like,
Yeah,
"Well, how'd they get out?" So anyway,
I'm
that
sure
makes
we
sense
would
that
have
there were
seen
some
it there.
scenes there, some scenes that would have been there. So,
It's
Speedman, do you have any soundtrack score stuff you want to talk about?
No, I didn't look at my notes before. I was planning on watching it again today and then didn't. I just wanted to watch it kind of raw last night
Yeah,
and jot some
yeah,
little ideas down, so I didn't get any soundtrack stuff.
okay, okay.
Apologies.
Oh
I
no, it's not. We're talking about if it didn't stand out to you, then you probably, it's fine. It's not a big deal.
There's something that you will notice if you watch it again now is that they actually utilize the main theme in multiple different ways throughout the movie. So the love scene between Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese is actually just the main theme, but played on straight piano keys. Still
Cool.
the same exact sound. It's just played with a different instrument where the rest was done
Oh,
on synthesizer.
I love when movies do that. They
Yeah, it's
just
just
use the same. You can hear the melody, but they just do different instruments or speeds or
yeah,
whatever. It's so
yeah.
cool.
I
So
just looked at my notes, and the only thing I have for sound, it's not in like a sound category, is it says sexy piano for love scene. I had no idea it was the T2 theme
nice.
or
Yeah,
Nice.
no,
T1 theme. Sorry.
it's the theme just played on keys.
Oh, that's great.
One thing that I did really like that the producer of the music, Brad Fidel, did was he described the sounds when you see the Terminator on the screen as a mechanical man and his heartbeat. And every time you see him on screen, you just hear that ting,
Hmm.
ting. And it's just like the sounds make it seem like a mechanical man and a heartbeat. So if you have that in your mind when you watch it, it's so perfect.
Hmm.
I did touch on was that when we were recording that the sound, that iconic ping sound, is actually from him hitting his microphone with a cast iron skillet?
Oh,
I'm
I
not
don't
sure. I
remember,
can't
but that is.
remember, but
But
tell it
I'm
quick,
glad that you
anyways.
mentioned it again
Yeah, I feel like
because
that's
it just
worth bringing up in the sound. Like
just
that
makes me laugh.
that iconic ting you hear in that Terminator theme.
Smashing
It,
his mic with the skillet.
he was hitting his microphone with a fucking cast iron skillet. You can totally
So
hear it. If you watch it, you'll pick that out and you'll be like, "Holy shit." Just look up the theme after and listen to it.
you just
It's
ruined the
perfect.
theme song for a ton of people because all they're gonna think about is some guy smashing a mic with a skillet every time they hear it now.
Or there's going to be a whole bunch of synth producers that discover how to nail
Yeah.
the Terminator sound
Yeah.
now.
There's just you got a bunch of Terminator theme clones coming out right after this.
Totally. Actually,
Um,
Mitch Murder, he's a synth producer, does a very good Terminator cover. Highly recommend.
do you have anything else sound related you want to talk about as you're an avid music lover?
The only thing is, I really liked just how he conveyed mood through the songs. Like the future theme was very militaresque, like just dun 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 dun, just like you that classic military style suspense and action just sound he put into it was I noticed it right away as soon as I heard it. It was similar enough to the actual Terminator theme that it was just such a smooth transition into this one, but very noticeable differences if you were listening to them. I really like the future theme. So I think my favorite takeaways were, like you said, the police station theme when they're escaping. I thought was one of the best sounds, one of the best songs that he produced, and then the future theme. And it was also sprinkled with some good tracks. You see, like in the bar scene, they have regular, like good music playing where it kind of breaks up this ominous tone and almost makes you feel like, okay, we're in a bar, there's lots of people. It gives you this false sense of security, this false safety. And I find music is such a good way to convey tone like that. And they just nailed the soundtrack.
Agreed. Well said. Well, so now we can get into probably what'll be a big chunk of what we're going to talk about, I would assume, maybe, is the time travel part.
Oh
And
boy.
how this really starts to spiral out, especially in T2. And I know that you haven't seen it in a while, Speedman, so I've seen it pretty recently, and I remember everything that happens, and man, it gets really crazy. But just the idea that Kyle Reese was sent back by his son to the past to give birth to him, like to impregnate his mother. I still sometimes struggle dealing with this. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts,
man.
Dred?
Well, I was trying to like come to grips with that when I was watching it. So was Kyle Reese sent back to protect Sarah, or did John know and knew he had to send him back to impregnate her? So he was fucking born. Like
Did he know?
the
Because
implications of that are
yeah,
extreme, and
because at
they
the end of
do
the movie,
touch on it.
she was like, "Do I tell you that who your father is? I think you deserve to know." So it's like, because then T2 starts where he's like 11. So it's like we don't know if he knows that. Oh, my
And
gosh.
there's one when she's talking about, or Kyle Reese is talking to Sarah Connor about who John is and what kind of man he is. He says that he didn't talk about his dad. All he knows is that he died before the war. And I'm like, so
And
does
then
he
Sarah's
not
like,
know?
no, I don't want to know anymore. I don't want to know anymore.
Yeah,
And
she
you're like,
stops him there. I was just like, in that scene there when he's talking about John Connor, that's when the whole time travel shit like really started to fuck with me and trying to decipher what
yeah,
Kyle
we
was
need to
sent
do.
back for.
Oh my
The
gosh.
scene
Speedman,
that
what did you think?
really stood out to me is when he was teaching her all of his like military stuff, like teaching her how to make bombs. Like, well, if he didn't come back, she wouldn't be able to teach John, but she also wouldn't have had John. And like, yeah, just the scene of her learning how to make bombs. Like, well, if Reese didn't show her that, like if she just got knocked up and then Reese died before he could teach her anything, would John have grown up to be this military commander if
Right.
Sarah wasn't able to teach him how?
Right. And then this gets into the paradox of if John was never a leader, would he have sent Kyle Reese after they defeated the robots back? And then Kyle
Yeah.
Reese never would have impregnated his mom. And it's just like, it creates paradox. So
Dude.
then, and the paradox solves itself in the next movie by creating another paradox and then another paradox. And I think that's just what the movies are until eventually it'll have to. I never saw Dark Fate, so I don't know.
It's
I'm very interested to see that, but
I
the
don't.
time travel is so trippy, man.
It's
Yeah.
so
Like
trippy.
I was writing down that in one reality he goes back in time to make sure that John's born. So then in this timeline, John will be the one to unite everyone again. But in his timeline, oh, it's just like fucking trying to understand it. Just I feel like I got gears in my head that are just they just
Right
won't
in
go
your
any
own ear.
further. Trying to like sit and actually figure out. I'm like, okay, wait, what?
I wonder how deep
So
Cameron went into it.
yeah,
Oh,
that
Like,
was actually going to be my point. Was like, did he even think about this, or did he just be like, ah?
yeah,
I'm
like,
just gonna
oh,
take a chance
okay.
on this funny movie and this awesome movie, this idea I had, and then it got really popular. Like, yeah, and then he
I
had to fix it, I guess.
he actually went backwards from the concept of the Terminator because that's his fever dream was where he conceptualized the Terminator. And then he made the film backwards, knowing that he wanted the Terminator. That was his main, that was the crux. That was the Terminator. And then he
The whole
went
movie was
backwards
to
from
get to
there.
that scene of this exoskeleton crawling out of a fire to murder
Totally.
him.
A big
Yeah.
tanker, him fucking standing up. That's like his dreams in reality. Oh man.
Probably why
There's
that scene looked so good. He was probably very particular about making sure that scene looked really good. But
totally, and that was one of
Gotta
my
nail
favorite
that
scenes.
scene.
That's when you see that like really good stop motion look of that fucking Terminator puppet. There
I
was
remember when we were doing our watch through, you stopped it and you were like, I need to stop and like just look at this because it looks so good. Just that
yeah,
full body shot of the Terminator there.
After he
I've
stands
It's
up,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
man. And even though you know it's fake, it still looks so sinister and so ominous that
Yeah.
it's believable. Even though you know it looks so fake, it's still believable.
They just did a
Stop
really
motion
good job
photography. Yeah,
through the whole movie. Kyle Reese explaining how relentless it is that when you see
totally.
him in his true form, you're like, oh fuck,
Yeah.
Reese
And
was
this lends
right.
back
This
to
is a
what I
killing machine.
and that lends to like it the whole movie from the very beginning shows that it's like he punches a hole in a guy after he tries when he's like trying to hit him he tries to stab him and he's like, oh, I'll just punch a hole in you and steal your clothes, and then he just opens the door and he's like, is your name Sarah Connor, blows her away, and then just walks like the entire movie is just setting up this entire thing where he's this unstoppable force, and
I
then
he would
they
actually
never
keep making him
stop.
look even crazier. Go
I
ahead.
really liked how he didn't stop shooting as well. Like his goal is to kill, and so he makes sure that she's dead. Like everyone he shoots like 7 or 8 times. It's not
Yeah,
like
he doesn't
one in the
stop.
head and then just bang, 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 bang. And it's
Yeah.
also kind of interesting that they didn't even show a dead person. Like they showed him shooting people. Oh, I guess the heart rip invalidates
But
this entire statement. But
they
Well,
uh,
and
only
then
showed him
and
punch a
then
hole.
Ginger. And then
yeah,
Ginger,
that was
he picked up Ginger's head, and you saw her like blank face.
yeah, and that was like 30
Oh, then the
something
phone
minutes
rings.
in.
Yeah.
31 minutes is the first time it shows like dead people after you've killed them besides the immediate scene at the very beginning. I thought that was interesting how he had killed like several people and it's just him, the view of like him shooting, not necessarily the body.
And that
Okay.
was so yeah. So and in my notes here, I actually because the whole thing I think that's really good is when you get to that final moment and you see the endoskeleton. It's so much better because they've spent the whole movie, literally from the beginning. You see Kyle, he steals some homeless guy's pants, has a sawn-off shotgun he stole from a police officer, is wearing a stolen pair of shoes and a trench coat, and he's got a rope to hold it around his shoulder. And then the Terminator has a full set of clothes and a car that he stole from some guy, and um, as well as 5 or 6 different
Guns.
weapons. Yeah, he's got so many guns. So just from the very beginning, before you even know who each of them are, you're being shown that like this is an unstoppable guy that will stop at nothing, and you don't know that he's a machine, you don't know he's unstoppable, you just know, wow, he punched a hole in a guy, but he is 7 feet tall, so maybe it's possible. Like if you didn't know trailers and this was the 84 and you hadn't seen anything about this and you went in, for the first 30 minutes you'd be like, who the hell is this giant man killing these people that appeared in a ball of thunder? Like who is this, like, so it's like this awesome tension building they go through, because if you were to see that scene, the scene of him standing up without all of that building before with the tension, it just wouldn't hit the same. You're like, oh, what's this stupid stop motion robot doing? Like, but
Totally.
Yeah.
you know that it's gonna not stop. Like, and they're like, you just were in a truck that blew up.
Yeah.
The truck exploded while you were in it, and he's just totally fine. A slight limp, but yeah.
Yeah. He still has
Did they
both limbs at that
show
point.
other T-800s in the future or was it just the tank tread robots with
Just the
the like side guns?
Yeah, it was
Well, no,
just
wasn't there
those.
one? It did show one, right?
No, it
One
does show
infiltrated
one Terminator, yeah.
infiltrating into the thing. We don't know if it was a T-800 or
Yeah, but
not,
it
but
doesn't show the endo. It's just the skin
Yeah,
version.
right, he was covered in
he was
skin. Yeah,
like we can extrapolate that it was a T-800 just from what we've learned through them speaking that they look like humans and they can't tell the difference, and that was the reason why he was able to infiltrate. And the dog, because he does say
right.
we use
Yeah.
dogs, that was one of the indicators. But a cool thing about that, the actor that they used for that Terminator in the future scene was Franco Columbo, who is
Was it?
Arnold's lifelong friend and
Oh, that's
fellow
awesome.
bodybuilder.
I
And
thought it
Arnold
looked
used
like
to,
him, but
Oh, I
I
remember you
didn't think
told
it
me
was
about that.
him.
yeah, so Arnold used to always try and get his bodybuilding buddies parts, and him and Franco were like best friends. Franco moved from, I think he lived in Germany actually also with Arnold, and they both moved to the States around the same time. So they've been like lifelong best friends, and he got him that role as another Terminator.
That's so cool. That's an awesome bit of trivia.
Yeah, I just love how Arnold he was always just so awesome trying to bring other people in and get other people in. That's not the first movie he's done that with bodybuilders.
That's kind of why I thought that Ginger's boyfriend might have been, but I looked him up and he's
Hmm.
just an actor.
I think that guy's in Back to the Future too. I remember seeing him in something. I think he's like making out with someone and falls down the stairs when he's trying to escape. He's in something, and I know that scene. He does that
Maybe he's
exact
just
thing.
a stunt man.
Can't remember what he did in it, but to the time travel thing that you're talking about, there's one scene that like is actually a beautiful scene, and it's when Sarah Connor asks Kyle Reese if he has a woman, and he tells her about having her picture and how he looked at it and he saw that she looked sad, and he was always wondering what she was thinking at the time. And she was fucking sad because she was thinking about him because he had just fucking died and she just got that picture taken. So he was in love with her.
She wanted to whether or not she was going to tell her unborn son if Kyle Reese was his dad, and that's what
Yeah,
she's thinking
man.
about. And she just snaps the photo.
So
yeah, you're right. Wow, that's
he like loves her, and he doesn't know that in this moment she's also thinking about him. And I thought that was so beautiful. It
That's
was such
pretty
a
cool.
beautiful thing to add. And yeah, I just loved it, man. I even stopped. My girlfriend was sitting here when I was watching it through again, and I'm like fully broke it down and explained it to her because I'm like, that's beautiful. This is an action movie, and they actually put this little tidbit in here that is actually just fucking beautiful. It's a good moment.
Not only that, after she got this photo, she held on like. So we're left to speculate, but like she had that photo, and then John had the photo. Why did John have the photo for so long, and then why did he give it to Kyle?
Yeah.
Did John know that the photo was going to be so important to drive him to want to go to the past to save her? Like, how privy was John to all of this stuff?
Did
Like,
he know that he had
from her?
Yeah, did he know
Photo of herself for so long and then give it to her son, right? Did she do it? She knew that it was going to be so important to him, so she kept it to give it to John, to give it to Kyle.
Well, she did know that because he told her that he fell in love with her by looking at the picture. So, man, it all depends on how much John knew. She had to have told him. Like, what would she say to John? Hey, give this to some dude named Kyle Reese.
Maybe not that
Don't worry
obvious,
about
just don't lose this. Always keep this, make it a sentimental thing.
Yeah.
And
or
then
maybe
he would
just
always hold it.
Show it to your
Reese
troops
would be
too.
like, what are you looking at, Johnny?
Yeah.
Oh, my mom. She's dead.
Show it to your mama.
Your mama.
That's where the yo mama line comes in.
Yeah, man. That time travel.
It's going to get even crazier when we get to T2.
There's so many aspects of it that I didn't even think about. The one that stood out to me was just the bomb thing.
Bomb thing?
Yeah, that I talked about earlier. Just him showing her how to make bombs.
Yeah.
Him training her so she could train John. But like, yeah, the picture I didn't even think of. So many layers.
She goes to ram the cap on the fucking bomb, and he's like, "Whoa!"
And then she pretends to throw the bombs at him. Like, hey, here's a funny joke.
Then he comes in, and then after they have the conversation, he's like all mad. He's like shoving them into the bag like against each other. And I was like, "What are you doing? You just told her to be careful."
There's actually a funny quote in that when he said he learned to make these as a child, and she's like, "Some childhood you had, or must have been a fun childhood," she says. I thought that was hilarious. Just like, yo, he basically just told you that his entire childhood was him running and hiding from
he was a child soldier.
Yeah, from hunter killers, and he was making plastique, some form of explosive, to stay alive, and you just fucking tell him he had a fun childhood. Oh, dude.
God.
Yeah,
there was. You know what? Every time I watch the movie, though, I get really mad about his use of this plastique, because he's just like
lobbing it out the back of a car.
Yeah, he's just lobbing it, and I'm like, he wasn't even close. Every time that I threw it out, I was like, what a complete waste. You wasted all 5 of those. None of them did anything except for the one you used to blow up the truck.
There was only one time when he was hanging out the window that actually was like, okay, you might have done it good there. You can see him holding it for a way longer, because the first few he throws blow up behind it, and then he throws another one where he holds it and the fuse is going for way longer. He's trying to time it so he can fucking blow him up and off the bike or something, I guess. But
that was why I was like, your aim's so weird, because like earlier in the movie we see him in the future and he throws it and perfectly lands it underneath the tank tracks. He throws that bomb, and I was like, as I was watching, I was like, why do you all of a sudden like for action and suspense, I guess. But I was like, really? All of a sudden, you just forget how to throw these bombs that you've been doing your whole life?
Okay, we also have to talk about the time travel in the instances of how Michael Biehn knows how to fucking do anything in
That was
1984.
Yeah.
Why does he know? How does he know what a phone book is? How does he know how to use a phone book? Like,
How does he not freak the fuck out from seeing like people walking on the street? He must just be so into it, like is man
yeah.
on such a mission, and he takes it so seriously because
Well, or
he
that, or John like had to have like sat down with him, and maybe John like was grooming him the whole time, right? Like maybe John was
yeah,
doing some grooming for him to be like, well, this is how it worked in the past, is we had these books with, or maybe they had longer than Kyle made it seem, where he was like, "Oh, we
right,
won," and then they showed that they shoved the Terminator into the past, so we had to go. But he
yeah,
was like, maybe John was like, "Well, we could just send you back where he went, so I could spend 6 days explaining how the past worked to you, and then send you back to where the robot went. Like it's not necessarily
yeah.
about time, maybe,
You know
maybe."
what? That's a good point. I didn't really think of it as John, preparing him for what the past was going to be like. And John did live in the current time. So that's actually a really fucking good point. And we actually don't know that. It could have happened
Yeah,
off
yeah.
camera, not in the
There's
movie, but I just thought it was
there's
really funny
Yeah,
how he's
yeah,
like,
I was thinking that too, where he's like immediately goes to the phone book and he's like, and I'm like, how do you even know, first of all, what the alphabet is, what
or what
alphabetical order is, why
or what a
people's names
cop
would be in this
is.
book? Right, yeah, so many, you're like, you were born after the war. Your life
Yeah.
was rubble and stones and starvation and
Yeah.
dogs. Like, how would you, yeah. So it's
How would
like,
he even know? Like, did John Connor describe what a police officer was and what the blue and red flashing lights mean? So he just knew that he had to run away because he was going to be apprehended and not able to go after Sarah. Like, how much prep did John
yeah,
give Kyle? It must have been extensive, but
yeah.
it felt
Then
like
there was
when they
also,
were talking about it, it was just a holy fuck, they sent someone back in time. We have to send someone now. So it didn't feel like there was any
it
prep that
seemed
could
like,
have
yeah,
been done.
yeah, that's what it sounded like when he was talking about it, but
Because then
who knows?
the Terminators or the Defense Network actually destroyed the station that enabled time travel. He
I
says
thought
as soon as
Oh
he went
yeah,
back, they
that's
destroyed
right.
it.
I thought he was saying that basically John destroyed the station. Like they planted bombs and ran away so that it was like it's a suicide mission. No one can go to the past and no one can come back to the future. That's what I thought,
Right.
was that John had blown it up, not the
So the
Defense
Okay.
Network.
Terminators couldn't just send another one
Because he said
back.
the grid was smashed, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It
Terminator
could
had
have
lost. The system had lost. Skynet had lost. So that's what I
provided
thought anyway.
that Kyle Reese succeeded, and he
Yeah.
did. He banged the girl.
He did.
Well, and then there was like there's also other parts where it seems like Kyle might not know what cops are, because like when they crashed, he went to jump out. There's 30 cops outside, and he goes to
Yeah.
jump out, and he was like, "No, they'll kill you," as
Yeah.
if he like didn't know that all these guys with guns were gonna, and he was gonna be like, "Oh, I got my 3 rounds and my double barrel. I'll take them all
Yeah.
on." It's like, come on, Kyle,
As
what are you doing?
as the cop walks around the front of the car and straight into like no cover at all and telling him to get out of the vehicle. I'm like, pretty sure he wasn't gonna do that, but
Yeah, yeah. It was the 80s. Policing was different.
Yeah, hip
yeah.
fire and no cover necessary.
I think they did do a pretty good job of, showing how intelligent Kyle Reese was though and how resourceful he had to be in the
Yeah,
future because
yeah.
that whole scene of him making bombs and talking about his childhood, they often show him hot wiring vehicles even though there's
Yeah,
only one vehicle that you see in the future and they
So
crash
you
it.
would have had to known that he would have, had to have known something, right? Because he
And
immediately just like broke the crankshaft off of the, not crankshaft, but the ignition out of there, and then just
totally.
took the sleeve off, so put it back in. Like he knew what he was doing.
So I think probably he had a lifetime of taking parts and making things work. And that's likely what would happen in some crazy dystopian futures. You become very resourceful at making things work. And it gives you a skill set that you can use in present day when you travel back in time.
Lifetime of dealing with machines
Totally.
to prep him for this ultimate battle. The final battle, as
the
the title
final.
scroll at the beginning says, the final battle would not be fought in the future,
Tonight.
but it would be fought in the present tonight. Yeah,
That's
good
also a
stuff.
great way of introducing like backstory and setting the viewer up to succeed is by just a classic text on the fucking screen.
Yeah,
Hmm.
A lot of movies use that. A lot of movies today even will still use the text on the screen. A little bit of reading, you learn about like the backstory and a little bit about the world, and it's just puts you in the present moment. That showed us, it gave you that like little title, that text on the screen, and then put you in the future.
Thanks, George Lucas, for the great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1977. He was definitely before, and 82.
Yep. All right.
I've-
Well, is there anything anyone else wants to talk about? Because I don't think that I have anything else. We've touched on pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about.
Just gonna
Anything
look
that we
over my
missed?
quick notes. I think I hit everything I wanted to talk about.
Oh, I've got so much, but I think we actually talked about a
Oh,
lot of stuff.
the last
Uh,
note I have is the only thing that the T800 doesn't get crushed is his arm sticking out, reaching, and that shows up in T2. That's the only relic they have of the T800. I was like, oh, that's a nice touch.
Totally.
Well, that is where it gets even crazier. And I don't know how much we want to get into T2 right now because I don't know how much you remember, but that arm being left behind is its own paradox in and of itself because that arm is the template they use for the
Oh,
chip that they
right.
use to create
To build
Skynet.
Skynet.
And if Skynet was never built from the chip, then it never would have sent the robot in the past. So like that's where you're like, okay, well, how did them yeah, it starts to warp your mind. So and I yeah. So that
Yep.
arm being left there was the whole reason why Skynet was even invented in the first place, but it only happened because Skynet was invented. And then
Yeah.
they lost, and then it just starts looping on itself, and then the next
And
movies just have to get further and further away from that.
did they just do it as a meme too? They're like, hey, remember that fucking crazy dude who said Skynet? Yeah, let's name this Skynet. Like, did they
Right,
choose
yeah,
the
like
name for no? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why did they choose Skynet?
yeah. It starts getting so complicated with the arm and stuff. So
They just wanted to fuck over this guy and fuck with him. Be like, oh yeah, let's just call it Skynet.
he just
Let's
vanished.
self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's do it.
The other part though,
Complete
like when he was in
self-fulfilling
the police
prophecy.
station, like they had to have taken his prints and run them against some sort of database. They didn't go like this guy doesn't exist. Maybe there's some credence here. Like
Maybe he
it
just
has
didn't
to
Yeah,
have
be
no
a
like,
doubt.
criminal record.
I
If you
guess
didn't have a record, you wouldn't show up. As
Are
I mean, I don't know about
that's true.
any of
Yeah, you're
this,
right. Yeah,
but
if you wouldn't have never been arrested, they wouldn't have your fingerprints. That's
yeah.
true. So
um
just weird. I just thought that was odd that like they just were like don't believe him at all, even though it doesn't seem like he exists because he doesn't. I don't know. Whatever. I digress.
I want to know what your guys' favorite scene is in the whole movie. Like, what stood out to
Hmm.
you as being the best scene?
Hmm.
Either one of you want to go
The
first?
stop motion T800 standing up and then just like starting to walk forward in the flames. I love that scene.
Yeah, that was the one that, like Bobby said, we watched it before, and I paused it and went back like 3 times watching it stand up
Yeah.
because I also love that scene. I thought it was so well done. That stop motion effect just looks amazing.
It's so
Sinister.
yeah, it's sinister. I wonder if it's because like the low frame rate movement makes it seem herky jerky. Like in Pan's Labyrinth, when this guy is like moving around all erratic, it's so much scarier than if he was just
Right.
fluidly moving.
Yeah.
I wonder if that has something to do with it. But
'Cause
like,
it was
yeah,
so different from how we'd seen the Terminator act before, as if it was
yeah.
like the only thing he could do was like
Right.
had these jerky movements because he was like
Now
phasing
that
in and
his
out of
skin was gone,
All
yeah,
that
and I'm
was
sure that
left was
the
machine.
robot,
There was no part man anymore. It was just full machine.
all pretense of having to appear human is gone.
Yeah, now it's just herky jerky. Bobby,
herky
favorite
jerky.
scene?
So thinking about it, and then actually I had to think about our conversation we've had, and based on our conversation, I think I'm gonna have to say the the explanation slash chase scene that might between Kyle and Sarah, where he explains all the things you're talking about. He gives the explanation of what a cyborg is. I just you explaining it, and then I realized why I like the scene so much. You verbalized it perfectly for me. Was it shows you exactly it gives you the exposition without having to give us a whole novel to read on screen or for us to
Totally.
listen to some annoying thing like just the way it introduces you to the lore and the ideas of this world. It's such a fun way, but it keeps you engaged because it's a chase scene. Yeah, I
Totally.
think that's probably right.
It
Definitely
was
my
so
favorite scene.
organically done just through the dialogue. I thought that
Yeah.
was so well done. That's actually my favorite scene, but if you rewound it like 10 minutes, my favorite scene is the first time all of them meet, and that's in Tech Noir, and then the subsequent chase scene. You have all of these three characters that you've only seen separate coming together for the first time in Tech Noir, and it's fucking tense. You see him, like the Terminator, appear in Tech Noir after he just killed Ginger. You see Reese lurking in the bar, just watching her the whole time, but he's actually not watching her. He's looking to try and see who's looking at her and who's going to make a move so he can tell who a Terminator is because he doesn't have a dog. So it's just like this really tense scene, but the first meeting of all three main characters. And I thought it was so well done. And then, like you said, the subsequent describing and our first as viewers introduction to what a Terminator is. You first see him getting fucking loaded full of shotgun shells and keep going, and then you get this full description that he will not stop ever until his target is dead. And it just really painted such a good picture of what they were truly up against. So that was definitely my favorite scene.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, should we try and rank this one, boys?
Oh boy.
Oh, the ranking system. I forgot about that.
Ranking. So what's a good applicable ranking for that fits the bill for Terminator?
I really thought the cybernetic arms left in the past was really funny. That one cracked me up.
I
That's
just thought
could
how
do- I
many
mean-
time paradoxes.
Yeah.
I
let's
like
see.
the cybernetic arms because I mean that really is setting up the time paradoxes as well.
that's true.
like a huge part moving forward is that
That's what-
fucking
no,
arm.
I didn't
and
even
the
think of that
whole
until
movie-
Bobby said.
But we don't
about
know
the
that
T2
if we're
one.
just going off of Terminator. We
True.
don't know that until we watch T2. So if we take all bias and all external out of it and just go off this one film, what would we go
Cybernetic
by?
arm is like the final scene almost. It's the final confrontation scene. So it's
But-
a good like capstone.
Is that something that would have stood out to you? Had you
I don't
not-
know. Probably not. Not as
Yeah, I mean, you
clearly,
would've
at
just been
least.
like, oh, he's finally dead. Like,
Yeah, he's
finally
dead. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be like, oh, but his arm. I see that.
It's kind of
coming
cool
up
that
soon.
I actually just realized through us talking about it, but the last scene when the Terminator dies is his arm sticking out of the machine, and in T2, the last scene is him lowering himself into lava and his arm sticking out,
Alright.
giving him the thumbs up. That's the last scene is Terminator arms. That's what we get to end both films. So, yeah, I like
Well,
the
either that or we could go with plastiques.
plastiques.
Yeah.
Or wasted plastiques, actually, but whatever.
Yeah, I like that. How many
wasted plastics?
All
Well,
of them.
yeah.
That's
At
applicable
At
for
least
me.
7.
Well,
What's
if it was, what's it out of?
5.
At least
Well,
7
I-
out of 5. If he
How
had
many
more
plastiques
plastics,
did
he
he
would have
have?
wasted them.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, you're right. He would have.
He would have thrown them if he had them.
All right, so actually out of 5.
Mine's probably going to be 4. And the only thing that's going to hold it back would be in modern sensibilities, the visual prosthetic stuff when he's in a truck and stuff. Everything else of the movie is perfect to me. I love the way it's filmed, the grain that they have in the film, the aesthetic, just the music. Everything is perfect for me. Everything, the storytelling, the way it weaves in and out, the way they go back and forth. Everything was great. It's just that you really get pulled out of it in those scenes with the prosthetics. So I'm going to go 4 out of 5 wasted plastiques.
Well, that's actually very accurate because he did blow up the truck with the final plastic.
The last one.
So, in Bobby's canon, he hasn't placed that yet. The Terminator's still alive.
Damn. That's right. That's right. Well, he's still alive after the last plastic anyway.
That's
wait,
true.
no, you're right. No, he's not, because you're right. The last plastic blew him in half and then he got crushed. So what do you say, Dredd?
I'm at a solid 4.5 plastiques, wasted plastiques out of 5.
Where's that 0.5 coming from?
Oh, it's just I don't know if I can give it a full 5 stars just because probably the same things that you touched on, but at the same time, I'm a huge fan of the visual effects. I think my trepidation of giving it a full 5 out of 5 is just that where do you go from there? You know, I don't.
Yeah.
If I give it a 5-star rating, where do we go from there? I don't have anything. The
Nothing
next
can
movie
be better.
is gonna be. But you know what? I fucking rescind it. It's a full 5 out of 5 for me. Terminator is one of my favorite movies because of the amazing science fiction story. I love the world they build it and how they tell it. I think it's done perfectly. The acting is great on every level. I find all of the supporting characters are good. The score is fantastic. One of the most iconic themes in a movie. If you look at synthwave producers, everyone talks about the Terminator theme. Action packed. Fucking right. It's action packed. Whole
Action-packed.
movie's a chase from start to finish. I don't know, man. It's got love. It's got Linda Hamilton, Michael Biehn, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Really, if you put those three in anything, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. If I'm being honest, they don't
All right,
even have
fair
to
enough.
fucking do anything.
Well said. Well said. Fair enough. What about you,
I
Speedman?
probably, before this talk, I probably would have given it a 3 just because the visuals were so distracting for me in a number of ways, even from the title sequence. Like I talked earlier about how I really liked the font. It was awesome, but the way it panned across the screen, it would kind of like jerk up and down a little bit. And just being so accustomed to modern filmmaking, it was hard for me to look past little things like that. So it's completely unfair that I'm penalizing it for that. But listening to you guys talk about it and some of the lore and some of the little things that I didn't really think about have brought it up to a 4 for me for sure. Like
Nice.
the time loop stuff that I wasn't really considering. I mean, I considered it a bit, but I didn't consider the obvious of him going back and impregnating, like making himself basically. It's fucking odd. And yeah, like the stuff that you guys brought up tonight elevated the movie as a whole for me. Whereas before I thought it was a good action movie, but the visuals I just couldn't get past them.
So
They're
for me,
endearing, but it
can I say
detracted
something
from
about
the
the
whole.
visuals?
Yeah.
I feel like it's the same as trying to play a game that you used to love, and the visuals are just dated. If you remember how you felt at the time when you first played that game, it was fucking next level,
Oh
dude.
yeah.
Do you remember
100%.
seeing like Mario 64 and or GoldenEye, even better yet, GoldenEye was amazing. You never seen a first person shooter that looked Doom, I guess. I mean GoldenEye, I don't know if
Oh,
it's a
yeah,
step up from
same,
Doom, really,
same idea
but
though. Yeah.
same idea is that graphics that you saw was groundbreaking and you
Oh,
were blown
absolutely.
away at the time. And so I think you just definitely nailed it when you said that modern day kind of spoils us because of what we have. Like if you see CGI now, man, it's insane. Look at like Princess Leia and Rogue Squadron.
Yeah,
Mm.
even like hobbyists can make
Rogue One. My bad.
photoreal shit. And
Yeah.
it's definitely unfair of me to rate it through a lens of today, but it's hard for me to separate that and look back.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
Well, I
and
mean, that's
like I
like me.
said,
I the same way. I kind of that was what dropped it down for me as well. It's just sometimes like even for the time I can get there, but it's still just like it just pulls me out. It
yeah.
just pulls me out of the moment of the movie. It's you're in this intense scene where he's in the truck and it cuts back and I can't help but go, ha, that's
And it
hilarious
looks like
looking.
a Thunderbird marionette.
Yeah, you're just like, whoa, that looks weird. And so like it just kind of pulls you out, and then you get lost, and then you're like, oh right, we're in the middle of an epic chase scene, and
A very
there's
intense
plastique
scene.
being wasted and stuff. Yeah, so
yeah, I feel like you guys might have modern bias, but I have like 1980s bias
You've got
because I
nostalgia
love that
bias.
shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got nostalgia bias because my whole childhood, like, oh, and yours too, I guess, but grew up watching all these movies and I just fucking love them. And so I have that bias attached. That's probably why I got the extra 8.5 is because I wasn't taking that away. But like I said, if you put yourself back in that time and rated the movie as a first-time watcher,
Oh, it would have been unbelievable.
yeah.
And
Especially,
when
yeah,
we
'cause we're-
get
like I said, we're watching it in 1080p. They were probably watching it like
Yeah.
480 or something.
Like you said, 480, fucking, you can see the whole color grain on the theater.
Yeah. So you're probably like, it would have just been like, oh, blurry robot man, cool. Like,
yeah,
Yeah, totally. Oh, that looks like Arnold.
yeah. Oh,
I'm
red
sure
eyes. That must
the
be him.
likeness.
I don't know how many people knew who Arnold was at that point in time. He was just coming off of I guess Conan the Barbarian was his big movie before that, and that was pretty huge. So people would have known him.
All right.
Yeah.
So we got 4 from me, 5 from Dread, 4 from Speedman. Sounds good.
It's a pretty
Any
solid
closing
rated
thoughts?
movie.
Yeah, I would say. Started the bar high. Dread, do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, I just think that it's going to be tough following this one, man. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is one of the best science fiction films, future time travel films, that future dystopia. I mean, this movie really set the bar and just set what so many future movies were going to base like ideas off of. It's a really good movie, and it's going to be tough following it. But there's a lot of good 80s movies out there. I feel like
Many.
saying that, it's still going to be no sweat because I actually like some movies more than it.
I'm sure either way, it'll be fun having the journey with you guys. Speedman, closing thoughts?
This was a lot of fun. I'm happy to revisit movies of my youth and actually look at them kind of critically. So, yeah, it's going to be a real fun time. And I think once we get into the Jackie Chan shit, then my
Oh, boy.
nostalgia bias is really going to kick in.
Yeah. I want it
Fair
to be Jackie Chan.
Oh, yeah.
I want to beat somebody up with some windshield washers, wipers. Yeah.
I still
Or
want to be
whatever I can
Jackie
grab.
Chan. Except for maybe some of his political standpoints. But we're not going to get into that because we just talk about the movies. No,
All right,
I
well,
love it.
my closing thoughts are thank you for joining us for this episode of Action Pack Podcast,
Hey,
the
thanks,
inaugural
everybody.
episode where we went on to Terminator 1. Don't know what's going to be the next movie. I mean, obviously, it sounds like Terminator 2, but we don't know. We'll get back to you on that one. So, anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Gonna go ahead and